Now he knew, even as it says in verse 7, each one has his own gift from God, but it was his preference that people not be married. But he gives concession to that in verse 2 and says, nevertheless, because of sexual immorality, let each man have his own wife and let each woman have her own husband. So sexual desires are part of our makeup. God said it is not good that the man should be alone. I will make a helper comparable to him. Sexual desire is part of our makeup. We've been created with the natural longing to express our physicality to somebody else, to somebody of the opposite sex. And so marriage is simply placed as a proper way of expressing this kind of desire. You see, voluntary celibacy is good, but it's not a requirement for everybody. Not everybody's able to receive that commandment. Everybody has a different gift. There are some in this room right now who may have the gift of celibacy. In your mind, you're not even thinking of marriage because you don't desire to be married. That's just not something that you have. You may be one of these who are thinking, well, in the future maybe, but right now, no. It may be that you right now are just serving the Lord and enjoying Him so much that you're not even thinking about it. There are others who have a gift like that. They are celibates for the kingdom of God's sake. There's no desire within them at all to get married, and it's good when it's voluntary and it's by gift. But it's not a requirement for all. You see, there are some religious systems that actually teach that celibacy is necessary if you're going to serve God fully. But Paul in 1 Timothy chapter 4 verse 3 said that that is the fruit of demonic doctrine. He said forbidding to marriage actually finds its origin in doctrines of demons. He's saying that's not true at all. You're not more spiritual if you do not marry. Some people don't marry because it gives to them the ability to serve God without distraction. The problem can be that some people think that married life is better than being single. Now, obviously, married life has its benefits, but it's not a superior way of life. I also realize in this fellowship, because I enjoy my marriage and I enjoy my family and I love being a grandfather and all of that, that when I share, because out of the abundance of the heart my mouth will speak, I can give this idea to some of you that the best life is the married life, and that's not my intention. I had somebody just the other day on Friday approach me who was in our fellowship for many years, a young woman, has 3 children. She's been married for 10 years now, but she and her husband moved into San Diego County. And she was sharing with me that she came to the women's retreat because she still loves our fellowship, and you know, she has family that still attend here, and she'll come and go to church here and all, and she just wanted to be with the ladies and all. So she was at the retreat, and she was speaking to me, and she said something to me. She said, you know, I go to a great church. It's missions oriented. I love it. She says, but I miss the feeling of family that I have when I was with you. She says, because that's a feeling your church has. I understand that. I know that the way I speak and the things that I say and the illustrations I use can give the impression that the best life is the married life, but that's not scriptural. That's not my intent. I simply speak from my own experience, but that does not mean that everybody has to share that. There are single people who love the Lord, serve Him, and enjoy Him that way and don't want to get married. And that is just as good as being married. It's just as good because you're serving God undisturbed. You're serving the Lord with all that you have. And that's really the key, isn't it? That's what God has called us to do, to live out our life serving Jesus Christ. I know that some people are lonely. I know that there are some people who go to bed lonely every night. Years ago, I was doing actually a men's thing, and Marie was doing a women's retreat, and it was one of those times when we both were busy on the same night. It was a Friday night. She went for the retreat, and I went to do a men's dinner, and our children were small at that time. They were still little, and my daughter Anna was probably about 3 years old or so at the time. And I went out and I did the dinner, and I came home to a quiet home. And as I was walking around the house there, I remember going into my room, and it was just so quiet and everything. There was no noise, no activity, nothing. And, you know, no wife to come home to and all. And as I walked in, it was quiet. It was kind of eerie, you know, turning the lights on and walking through the house and it all quiet the way that it was. And the kids were at an aunt's house, and so it was just me in the house. And I walked into one of the rooms, and Marie had done the wash and had left some of the clothing there. Anna, my daughter's clothing on her bed. And I started folding it up and just kind of putting it away. And I got nostalgic at that moment. I got sentimental, and I began to think how how quiet this house is and how odd it is for me to be here right now by myself, not to have my wife around, not to hear the children's voices and all. And as I was folding and putting clothing away and everything, I thought about it, and I had this sense of loneliness that I hadn't had in a long time. And the Holy Spirit used that in my life for a moment there and spoke to me and said to me something to the effect that the way you're feeling right now is the way some people in the church feel every day. See, so I don't put that down. I don't want to disparage your loneliness. And some people in this room probably are lonely. Loneliness is epidemic in our society. You can be lonely and married at the same time, though. You can be lonely in a variety of circumstances. But some people have nobody to say, I love you to, nobody to hold them, nobody to sleep next to and wake up in the next morning with that they're married to and all. They don't have that. And I understand to a degree that is something that is difficult. And there's no doubt about that. And I wouldn't say that it can't be difficult. What I am saying is, there's something worse than being lonely, and that's being married to the wrong person. That is worse than being lonely, when you're married to the wrong person. When you're single, you have the freedom to serve the Lord. And when you're single, that's what you ought to be doing, and just enjoying Him even into your marriage. You should continue to do that. That's what Paul is talking about. He says, though, in verse 2, because of sexual immorality, let each man have his own wife. So sexual desire can drive us to find a way to satisfy it, but make sure it's in the context of marriage. In verse 3, he says, let the husband render to his wife the affection due her, and likewise also the wife to her husband. The wife does not have authority over his own body, but the husband does, and likewise the husband does not have authority over his own body, but the wife does. Do not deprive one another except with consent for a time, that you may give yourselves to fasting and prayer and come together again, so that Satan doesn't tempt you because of your lack of self-control. So notice how he says in verse 3, let the husband render to his wife the affection that is due her. That word render means to pay that which is owed. In other words, sexual affection is a debt of love. It's not simply self-satisfaction. You see, before a guy and a girl get married, the guy's dating her. Basically, he's playing a game in some ways. If he's a worldly guy, he definitely is. And that's one of the reasons why we, even as men, created terminology relating to our physical prowess and our conquest. And that's why a guy will talk to his friend and say, yeah, you took so-and-so out last night. Did you get to first base? You know, I got to second, man, or I got to third. You know, I scored. That's a mentality guys have. And they use that. And so for a guy, sexual involvement doesn't even necessitate love. I don't even have to know your name. It's that way. And we can make promises all we want, and we'll say, oh, I'm going to love you, I respect you, of course I know. And we can use every line in the book, but we have one goal, and that is to score. That's what we want to do. And once it's done, we don't need to call you up. We might want to call you up once in a while to meet you, but we don't want to be with you. We just wanted that moment. And that's what happens outside of marriage. When you're married, you're supposed to render due affection. You owe your wife something beyond just, saying, I'll call you up. You have your moment with her, but you wake up the next morning with her, and the next morning with her, and the next morning with her, the next week, the next month, the next year, the decades into, and that's called marriage. You're not using her, you're loving her. And there's a difference between loving someone and having lust for them. And some people confuse that. They think, oh, he loves me. No, he has lust for you. If he loved you, he would respect you. He doesn't love you because he's using you. And a lot of times they just don't understand that. As long as the guy can use the right kind of line, say the right kind of thing, find the right kind of button to push. And it goes the other way now, too, with the girls. Doesn't really matter. I'm not asking for a commitment. Why not just enjoy ourselves together for one night? What's the big deal? Well, the big deal is it destroys society and it ruins your life. That's the big deal, and it ends up with eternal punishment. And that is something to think about. Studies show that there is a higher level of ongoing sexual satisfaction for those who are married. It's true that affairs give a short-lived time of excitement. That falls in line with what Proverbs 9:17 says. Proverbs 9:17 says, stolen water is sweet, and bread eaten in secret is pleasant. There's a thrill to it, to that moment, to that conquest. But the bottom line is that once that's happened, you go out searching for something else. You want something else to fulfill your desires.